Howdy again everyone, and today I'm really pleased to be checking out something pretty exciting, the new Samyang AF 12mm f2 for Canon RF-S. That's right, this is Samyang's first officially licensed Canon RF mount lens. It has full autofocus capability, including tracking autofocus, and it's compatible with Canon's in-body image stabilization, if your camera has it, of course, and in-camera corrections. Basically, it works just like an official Canon lens. I'd like to thank Samyang's UK distributor for loaning me this lens for testing for a week or so, but as usual, this is a totally independent review, and they had no input into the video at all. Price is in the description below, but I imagine it'll be about $400 to $450. Please forgive my husky voice, by the way, I have laryngitis today. Anyway, Samyang's 12mm f2 lenses for aps-c mirrorless cameras have been legendary for years now in all their various versions. They were one of the very first bright aperture f2 ultra-wide angle lenses available, and they've always been loved for their good image quality too, not to mention affordable price point. I've always loved these 12mm Samyang lenses. I've done video making with them in ancient sites in southwest Turkey, and even personally seen them being assembled in Samyang's factory in Masan all the way back in 2014. This autofocus version of the lens has been out on Sony E and Fuji X mount for a while now. It's good to see it migrating over to Canon RF-S, where Canon's newest aps-c cameras are in need of a broader lens choice. As an aps-c camera lens, it offers only a cropped image to your camera, the full frame equivalent of 19mm. That's a lovely ultra-wide angle, but not so wide that it just becomes difficult to compose your image. I tried it on my full frame Canon EOS R7 camera, where the system forces you to shoot in the lower resolution crop mode, whether you like it or not, I'm afraid. For anyone who's super curious though, here's what the full frame image does look like. I took this picture a while ago with an E-mount version on a full frame Sony camera. The lens's build quality is perfectly fine here. It's small and quite lightweight at only 200 grams or less than half a pound, and it feels solid enough, not too plasticky. The rear mount is made of metal, and it has a generous weather sealing gasket around the edge. On the side, we get a nice, flush, auto manual focus switch, which clicks on and off quite positively, and then a rubberized manual focus ring. It turns extremely smoothly, and the focus motors respond to it being turned very precisely. And here's the focus breathing. It's there, but nothing to seriously worry about on such a wide-angle lens. When it comes to autofocus, I found the lens working perfectly on my Canon EOS R7. The autofocus is reasonably fast, perfectly accurate, and the only noise the motor makes is a quiet rumbling sound, barely audible to me, to be honest. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the lens cooperated really well with the in-body image stabilization on my R7 camera. The lens has a front filter thread size of 62mm, thankfully for all you landscape photographers out there, and it comes with a small plastic hood, which, annoyingly, cannot be reverse mounted onto the lens. Aside from that though, this lens's build quality is absolutely fine, very nice actually, and its electronics worked perfectly for me. Alright, let's check out its image quality then, and this is the first time I've tested a Samyang 12mm lens on a 32MP sensor, which is a real challenge for even the sharpest lenses out there. In-camera corrections are turned on for this test. Straight from f2, in the middle of the image, we are seeing very good sharpness and contrast. Stop down to f2.8, and that sharpness edges up from being very good to perfect, and contrast is still looking great too. Anyway, let's open the aperture back up to f2 and check out image quality in the corners. Okay, they are definitely looking softer with some colour fringing on contrasting edges, but the image is not unusable by any means. Stop down to f2.8 and we see more sharpness, particularly when you look at the green foliage around the edge of the image. f4 and f5.6 see further improvements, offering quite sharp corner image quality now, although it's still being spoiled by that purple colour fringing on contrasting edges. f8 looks about the same, but stop down to f11 and some new softness from diffraction begins to creep in. Overall, well, considering we're working on such a difficult high-resolution sensor, it's a good performance here. While the lens needs to be stopped down a bit for best results in the image corners, it is at least easily achievable, and we always get great sharpness in the middle of the image. Slight shame about the colour fringing, but that's only on strongly contrasting edges. On a 24 megapixel sensor, the lens's images will look pretty impressive. Let's turn off in-camera corrections now and take a look at distortion and vignetting. Without corrections, we do see some moderate barrel distortion being projected here, but nothing too terrible, and at f2 the corners are fairly dark, but at least that vignetting falls quite gently across the image frame. Stop down to f2.8 or f4 and those corners brighten up, but that's about as bright as they get, so corrections are useful for this lens, but not essential. Next, close-up image quality, and the lens can only get you averagely close to your subject here. At f2, close-up image quality is a little soft. Stop down to f2.8 and it sharpens up quite a lot, but even if you stop down further, the close-up sharpness never quite seems to reach the same height as at normal distances. Now, let's see how the lens reacts to bright light. At f2, it's having trouble with a particularly large amount of glaring when bright lights are in the periphery of the frame. You will want to shoot with this lens's hood attached, definitely. Stop down to about f3.5 as I do here, and a lot of that problem clears up, but it never entirely goes away. Still, it's a better performance than the original manual focus version of the lens. And while we're working in the dark, let's take a look for coma and sun stars. At f2, bright points of light in your image corners show almost no telltale signs of coma wings, but that purple colour fringing is certainly evident. Stop down to f2.8 or f4 and the colour fringing and any other smearing clears up quite well. Let's zoom out then and look for sun stars. They begin to emerge at f5.6. Stop down to f8, f11, f16 or even f22, and they get legitimately impressive here. The points are of an uneven strength, but personally I like that better anyway. And finally, bokeh. Get close to your subject and at f2 you can get some pleasingly out of focus backgrounds here, and the quality of those backgrounds is always impressively soft for such a wide angle optic. And, well, that's about everything. As you might be able to tell, I've always been a huge fan of this particular lens, and I'm delighted to see it on Canon RF-S. I should be careful not to be too biased though. While it's a sharp lens, still, my 32 megapixel R7 was quite challenging for it, and particularly exposed its colour fringing weaknesses, and its work against bright light leaves room for improvement. But the lens generally does work really well, and its extra bright maximum aperture makes it a very nice choice for video work in particular. Its price will be reasonable too. On Canon RF mount it has two competitors, the cheaper Canon RF-S 10-18mm and the more expensive Sigma 10-18mm f2.8. Interestingly, all three lenses are similarly sharp at their equivalent apertures. There's not much difference between them in terms of resolution, which is nice to know. I checked on the test charts on my hard drive. They are all great optics, but out of the three of them, I would actually choose the Samyang lens. I like its reasonable price and extra bright aperture, which is so much fun to have available to you. Anyway, as it is, I can't quite highly recommend the Samyang 12mm f2 autofocus lens on Canon RF-S, even if I want to, because its optics are getting a little old and they do leave just a little room for improvement in places, but I generally recommend it without a moment's hesitation, as it is so very, very lovely, and it's a great choice for Samyang as their first official Canon RF mount lens. Gah, I had to work hard not to be too biased in that review. There's just something about those Samyang 12mm lenses I absolutely love. Thanks for watching everyone, and a special thanks to all my Patreon supporters who've helped to keep this channel trucking on sponsorship free for so many years now. They get all kinds of exclusive bonus content, including early access to special reviews, so check it out in the description below. Ciao for now, everybody.